Alrighty, so I actually have to be a little bit quiet right now because technically it is midnight here in the Twin City, and I actually just got back from the stadium and back to the hotel 10 minutes ago. And even though it's midnight, technically it's actually 11 o'clock right now because tomorrow is the end, or is it the beginning of daylight saving? I've never understood it wholly, but I know for sure that tomorrow the clock does move back an hour, so that means get an extra hour of sleep and also an extra hour to celebrate in terms of what I saw tonight at Allianz Field, and we'll definitely get to the game itself. But in terms of this review, I'm actually going to look back at today's playoff game and also yesterday's playoff game, because yesterday by the time I got to Minnesota it was like midnight too, and I was relatively tired, and not to mention I didn't even get a chance to finish watching those two games from yesterday because I was on that flight, and obviously unfortunately there was no Wi-Fi on the flight for me to watch the full game of both of those one. But yeah, we're gonna review those games first, and then we're going to do the recap of the three games that happened today, including the one that, like I said, I've attended just about an hour ago. But let us begin with the first game, which is Charlotte versus Orlando City. And by the way, in terms of these last 2 days, we saw two teams that is able to punch their tickets to the conference semifinal. But we most importantly have now seen a couple of game three. In fact, three of them is going to be heading into game three out of the five games that I'm going to review. And one of those is Charlotte versus Orlando City. So this was a game where, there was no doubt Charlotte played much better in this game, but the problem for Charlotte in this game is that they just couldn't finish, and they had to rely on the old PK shootout to get themselves into game three and get this one back to Inter and Cole Stadium. And that's exactly what they did in this one. Though in the first half, just like the first game, Orlando with most of the possession, and Charlotte was kind of sitting deep early in this one, looking for the counterattack. Abada would then puts it wide from close. And actually, let me just push back my computer a little bit so I can see the notes here I write here on my phone. Again, I put all the notes on my phone right now because I can't fit it all in this small board. Charlotte started to grow into this game with the possession and looking for the opener. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to do the time stamp for this. I think 5 games I should be able to do this review probably around 35 or 40 minutes or so. But in the 70-minute, the post would deny Malanda, who tried to put an outstretched leg to poke this one in. And then we had some small coming together between both of these teams, because you just kind of had a sense that with the way that, in these best of three series, when you play against each other in such a quick succession, yeah, there's going to be definitely some dislike that is going to happen between both teams. But in the 23rd minute, Galese would deny Abada on the header, but Anjuman get the rebound, but his weak header was clear off the line. There was no doubt that, again, Charlotte was pressing hard to try to get the lead. In fact, the shots were 6-0 for Charlotte 25 minutes in. I mean, they were well in control in this game. Orlando clearly have not showed up. The referee was Ento. He really sucked by the 40,000 inside Bank of America Stadium, which, I mean, I guess that's what happened when you have a big crowd, and also when you decide to make some unpopular decision in the playoffs, you're going to get the ref you suck kind of chant being heard all over the stadium, and not to mention also in an explicit way at time as well. But 40 minutes in, Orlando still have yet to register a shot up to this point. So there was no doubt Orlando was trying to do what Colorado did against the Galaxy, try to see how long before they get a shot in this one. The good news for Orlando is that eventually they did get it sooner than what Colorado did against the Galaxy. And what's even more fortunate for Orlando, this was staying at 0-0 for relatively long. And as I'll mention, as you probably already know, it would stay 0-0 for the remaining part of this game. But that wouldn't happen if Galese didn't deny Vargas from close in the 42nd minute. Galese was definitely coming big in this one, and we do head to halftime scoreless, despite the fact that Charlotte was the better team in the first half. Now, in the second half, Arjuman would hits it right to Galese as Orlando continued to have most of the possession, but they have rarely threatened the Charlotte backline. Again, we know that this Charlotte backline is really good. There's a reason why they are the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference this season. They do not allow a lot of goals whatsoever, and that's impressive considering there's some really good teams in the Eastern Conference on the attacking end. I mean, this is the same team that only conceded one goal against Inter Miami a couple of weeks ago as well. Privet would then hits it wide from close in the 54th minute. as an hour into this game, Orlando still have yet to register a shot, but it finally came in the 65th minute as the first shot for Orlando of the game did see Dagger Danforth had a shot that was blocked away. Diani then had a shot that was deflected and goes wide in the 71st before Burn would puts it into the stands. And that kind of moment just kind of sums up Charlotte up to this point. I mean, it has to be frustrating for that 40,000 fans seeing that they have come so close to scoring a goal and they couldn't quite do so. And I also thought Orlando might be playing for penalty because they are dropping their lines even more deeper than they have already done before, and they're just trying to ride out for the pressure. There was a shout for a penalty for Charlotte not given in the 90th minute, but then in the 5th minute stoppage time, Facu Torres thought that he stole this one for Orlando and sent them to the conference semifinal. The problem was the flag did not agree with him as there was an offside call on the development of the play. So yeah, that has to be a sigh of relief for those 40,000 inside Bank of America Stadium. They thought that of all the pressure that they pay off, they looked like they were going to give up a late goal, and it seems like the Cardiac Cats shook again for Orlando City. But fortunate for Charlotte, that goal didn't count, and that was also kind of the last thing we saw in terms of what happened in stoppage time. There was a lot of stoppage time in this game, and that also is a theme, at least in the playoffs, where there's been times when in the playoffs there's been just incredibly amount of stoppage time that has been given in the second half. But nevertheless, we go to a PK shootout, and in the shootout, we saw Kalina deny Maguire in round number 4 to win the PK shootout. But that's not the big story in terms of the PK shootout. The biggest story is the fact that Orlando missed 3 of their 4 PKs, including 2 saved by Kalina. And in some way, this PK shootout that we saw was very similar to the one between Minnesota and RSL in terms of the way that the team that lose the PK shootout missed 3 out of their 4 PK shootout, and the goalkeeper was a big story of it, at least for the winning team, as Christian Kalina definitely came up big in the PK shootout. And with this 3-1 PK shootout win, Charlotte is going to be able to force a game free, and this series is going back to Inter and Coast Stadium next week. And again, I'm not surprised that this is the case. I think between this series and maybe the Minnesota versus RSL series might be the closest series so far that we've seen. And while that series, as I'll talk about in a bit, is now over, this series is definitely not. And I think it's going to set up a very exciting game number 3. And again, coming into the playoffs, there's really not much separate between both of these teams. You could even say that it's pretty much a coin toss in terms of how each of these teams are going to play and who's going to get the win out of this series. And we'll see who, of course, will show up in game 3, because there's no doubt Orlando need to show up. I mean, they clearly did not show up in game number 2 and are probably very fortunate that they were able to force this to a PK show if Charlotte wasn't being a little bit more clinical in terms of their finishing throughout this game. But that being said, moving on into the next match, and that is Colorado versus the LA Galaxy. So the scoreline of this game is kind of a little misleading. I mean, yes, it looks like the scorelines are saying that we might have a repeat of what we saw in game number 1 when the Galaxy absolutely thrashed Colorado 5-0. But really, this one was a much more competitive game, and Colorado had their moments and did show some resiliency that they had throughout the season under Chris Armas, but ultimately in the second half, and really near the latter part of the second half, they kind of folded. And in some way, I think this game kind of sums up the Rapids season, where at times in the first half they shown that resiliency that they had, at least in the first half of the season, and then the second half happens, and yeah, they kind of folded in the end. Now in the first half, just 2 minutes in, Vines had a shot that was blocked away, and I normally don't mention block shots, but this one I want to mention is because already 2 minutes in, Colorado has equaled the amount of shot that they had in the entire game in the last one. They only had 1 shot in the last game, and it came around the 82nd minute mark. So that's good news if you're a Rapids fan, seeing your team at least had an attempt to trying to put the ball in goal, where in the last game they did not do that at all whatsoever. There was also a brief check after that to see whether or not if Abubakar had a challenge on Peck is considered to be a serious foul play. VAR basically said no to that point, but the referee did give Abubakar a yellow card, and that's important to note because he didn't give him a yellow card in that instant before the VAR check, and I guess he didn't give it because it's so early in the game. In the playoffs, you definitely do not want to give someone a yellow card unless if it's very egregious. I mean, that one maybe it's kind of borderline in terms of being egregious, but certainly I don't think that was deemed a red card whatsoever. But that being said, in the 8th minute, Peck would get him himself a little bit of revenge for that moment, because he would go on to get on the score sheet first for the Galaxy. So yeah, that made it 1-0 in favor of the Galaxy, but it's an absolute gift there. And Zach Steffen, yeah, he does not want to look this one back. He tried to clear this one away, but instead it was blocked by Peck, and then it was redirected into the back net. There has been some big goalkeeping fluffs that we have seen in these playoffs, and this won't be the last time I'll mention it in this video as well. We saw another game that had just a goalkeeping fluff that just kind of lets you scratch your heads, and just kind of doesn't really make the league very good in terms of the quality of goalkeeping at times. But yeah, that is definitely not a moment that Steffen would want to look back. But the Galaxy wouldn't mind. They take a 1-0 lead, and again, that's the last thing the Rapids needed to do in a must-win game like that. You cannot not be falling behind the 8 ball and also just allow that to happen, especially against a very potent Galaxy attack. Though that being said, Colorado started to dominate possession, but you kind of had to feel like that's going to play right into the hands of the Galaxy because of their good transitional moment. But then in the 19th minute, Oliver Larraz would score his first goal since July here, and score the first goal that the Rapids have had in the playoffs since 2016. It's hard to believe it's been that long since the Colorado Rapids have scored a playoff goal. Obviously, they've been shut out in the last couple of playoff appearances that they had, but he scored here to make it 1-0, or ties the game up at 1 apiece for the Rapids, and it was an absolute banger. It was just what the Rapids needed. They desperately need something to get back into the series, and that looked like was the moment to do so, to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Jovic did look to answer, but he puts it wide from close range. It was a bit of a quiet game for Dejan Jovic in this one. He was very active in the 5-0 win. This one, not so much. Larraz would then look for another banger, but this time it goes wide from long range. Paintsel then had a shot that was tipped over by Steffen, as I thought the Galaxy started to control possession and we're looking for the lead back. Maxwell would then heads one that clipped the top of the post. I thought things started to get even up, and both of these teams had their moments. Cool, but the question is who can get that next goal. Peck would then hit it right to Steffen after just a bad turnover there from the Rapids. But then in the 3rd minute of stoppage time, and this has to be an absolute killer for the Colorado Rapids. It looked like they were on verge of heading halftime with a 1-1 scoreline. Looked like they might have a chance heading into the second half, and then they concede a goal right on the stroke of halftime. It's Josef Paintsel. He scored from Yoshida to give the Galaxy a 2-1 lead, and that would be the scoreline heading into the second half. And like I said, just an absolute backbreaker. And now the Rapids found themselves behind the 8 ball in a must-win game in this game too. Now in the second half, Puig would hit it right to Steffen just 15 seconds into this game before Navarro would hit one right to McCarthy, as I thought both teams waste no time to try to get the next goal. But then we did go through a period where really not much dangerous chances were created by either team, and that kind of favored the Galaxy, knowing that they want to keep this game close. Paintsel would then puts it wide on the corner. Well, I say they keep this game close. I meant they want to see out this game as well to move on into the conference semifinal. Vines would then puts it right to McCarthy. The Rapids would start to push more man forward, but that only means that you basically now allow the Galaxy to play right into their hand of getting themselves more room to run behind on the counter, which is where they are very good at so far this season. Navarro then just missed an outstretched leg on a dangerous cross, and they needed that one badly because in the first minute of stoppage time, Ricky Puig basically turned the lights out at Dick's Sporting Goods Park and pretty much turned the lights out of the Rapid season as well, as he scored here from Fagundes to make it 3-1 in favor of the Galaxy. And then just for good measure, 2 minutes later, he scored again. I mean, he didn't need to drive the dagger even deeper into the Galaxy heart, but he did here as he scored from Peck to make it 4-1 in favor of the Galaxy. And yeah, that was the final scoreline of this game. Again, this game itself, the scoreline is a little bit misleading. The Rapids were at least in this game compared to where they were in the last game, but ultimately the Galaxy cruised their way into the next round. By the way, I didn't even mention the stats in the Charlotte and Orlando City game, so I might as well just mention there. There's a little fly right here. I don't know Well, actually, that's not a flag. That's just, I don't even know what that is. But anyway, in the Charlotte and Orlando City game, 13 shots committed free that Orlando City has. So yeah, that just shows you that Orlando didn't really quite show up in this game. And by the way, I do apologize. There's this light right here that's kind of causing a bit of a glare, so at times you couldn't really see the notes whatsoever. But it doesn't really matter. The only notes I put is like the goal scoring and the stats. I'll basically read it out. Free shots, or actually no, 5 shots off target compared to, or no, 3 shots on goal for the one that Orlando City had, 5 shots off target for the none that Orlando City has. Again, I'm starting getting very tired. It's been a long day that I have here in Minnesota. But 2 shots that was blocked for both of these teams, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to 43% possession that Shard has. And in the Colorado and Galaxy game, we had 9 shots for the 13 that the Galaxy had, 8 shots on goal for the 4 that the Rapids had, 1 shots off target for the 2 that the Galaxy had. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 45% possession compared to 55% possession the Galaxy has. So definitely not the way that the Rapids want their season to end in, but I don't think anyone is that surprised by this. I mean, with the injuries that they've been dealing with, I'm very surprised that Georgi Mihailovic was able to be back in this game, and there's no doubt that he does not look like he was 100% in this game. I mean, it's kind of a miracle that he's able to come back after looked like the injury that he suffered against Austin. Looks like that was a season-ending injury, but there's no doubt that for the Rapids, there's no shame in terms of how they exit. This has been an incredible season for them to get themselves back from a team that was pretty much in the doormat of the Western Conference to now being competing and look like a very fun team to watch. It's just that they don't want to kind of follow the collapse that they kind of had in the month of September into next season. I mean, it feels like the writings kind of was on the wall in September, despite all the resilience that they've shown. They need to do that again heading into next season and hope that maybe they get some more spending, although I can't really bet on that considering this is the Colorado Rapids and who owns this team itself. But yeah, for the Galaxy, of course, they move on. They're going to be facing against Minnesota in the conference semifinal, and this is also where pretty much both fan base, including myself in general, just hated the fact that the matchup between both of those teams is not going to happen until 3 weeks' time. Way to go, MLS, in terms of creating this playoff format and how bad it is between the first round transition into the conference semifinal, that is. But now, moving on in the next game. And now we're going to get to the game that happened today, the triple header that happened today. And we start off with NYCFC versus FC Cincinnati. And by the way, I didn't even update the scoreline when I wrote the board here. Let me just change that. It was not a 2-0 win that NYCFC had against Cincinnati, but it is still a 2-goal margin. NYCFC was able to win 3-1 in this one, but just like the last game, the scoreline is a little bit misleading because NYCFC, they kind of had to sweat it out a little bit in this game to force a game free against Cincinnati at TKO Stadium in a couple of days. Now, the first shot of the game did see Robinson heads it wide from close before the first shot for NYCFC. So Parks puts it high from long range. Oriano then was in on goal there, but he was absolutely raw by Matt Freese there. It wouldn't have counted because the flag went up, but what a save that was from Matt Freese, denying Oriano and a chance for Cincinnati to get the 1-0 lead. But I thought it was a lively start to this game as both of these teams was pushing for the opener. Hack would have a header that goes wide from the corner. The shots were 2-2 early in this game, but then in the 22nd minute, Martinez would score from Ianich to give NYCFC a 1-0 lead, and just a very lovely build up there from NYCFC. We've seen it before where NYCFC, they can be a very fun team to watch when the build up is correct, and here, just a lovely build up there that resolved with Ianich setting up Alonso Martinez there to bury it. And NYCFC with an ideal start in a must-win game to get themselves a 1-0 lead. Origiano did look for another, but he puts it right to Freeze before Wolf would hit one into the side netting. And I thought the game continued to be very even up to this point. Both of these teams were getting some good chances. That would have started to change because this is when NYCFC started to kind of take advantage of some chances. There was a shout for a handball for NYCFC not given. I thought Cincinnati at time had problem in terms of dealing with set pieces in this game. And guess what happened in the 40th minute? Yep, they conceded the second goal, and it came from a set piece. As Thiago Martins, the one that gets the second goal for NYCFC, and really just knocked out cleanly from Cincinnati, especially from Miles Robinson. I mean, when you basically are defending set pieces, you cannot head it backwards. If you head it backwards like that, especially toward the back post, that always spelled trouble. That's exactly what happened with Miles Robinson heading that one backwards. There was Thiago Martins, the one to pounce on it. And yeah, NYCFC has a 2-0 lead. Then there was a shot for a penalty for Cincinnati, not given, but we do head to halftime with NYCFC getting the 2-0 lead. But that lead looked like it was going to be short-lived, heading straight into the second half, because literally seconds into the second half, again, what is it with just goalkeeping howlers this playoffs? And we almost saw another one here where just a moment of madness here from Matt Freese. He almost forgot that he's a goalkeeper and not an outfield player, because he was off his line there trying to be a little cute in terms of dribbling it. Got dispossessed by Kubo, and then Kubo trying to hit it into the empty net, but somehow Hack was in a right position to deflect that one behind. And I'll tell you what, I even wrote Freeze. He basically owned Hack a dinner and some after bailing out him of an absolute howler like that. Again, just what is it with goalkeeper when it comes to making bad mistake? And in the next game, I'll talk about, we also had a goalkeeping howler as well. We then had some coming together between both of these teams, more of a small coming together. Again, when you play each other in such a quick succession, yeah, there's going to be some hatred that is start to be shown. I'm also kind of surprised. I didn't really see that in the game between RSL and Minnesota, as I'll get to, because I thought that game there would definitely be some feisty kind of thing after what we saw in game number 1. But in the 52nd minute, Assad puts it wide from long range as Cincinnati was on the front foot. They were looking to try to get one back, but I thought NYCFC has done a good job, at least staying disciplined in defense, not really allowing a lot of space for Cincinnati to work with the attack. It's almost like they were trying to see out this 2-0 win. Well, that didn't work, because in the 65th minute, Lucas Oriano, the guy that won the goal of the year this season, he's shown you why he can score banger goal, because he scored an absolute banger here from Santos and Acosta to make it 2-1 in this one. Just what Cincinnati needed to get themselves back into this game. Martinez did look to respond, but he missed wide there. And then Rodriguez puts it wide from close range, and I thought that goal kind of woke up NYCFC. They needed to restore their 2-goal lead up to this point. Freeze then denied Hadabi from close in the 80th minute, and really as the time winds down, you started to see NYCFC was starting to go a little Rohit mode, but they were holding on for dear life. Cincinnati was pressing hard for the equalizer. Powell then hits one right to Freeze in the 85th, but then he missed another big chance from close just 2 minutes later. Acosta then goes beast mode there, but he puts that one high. But then in the 5th minute of stoppage time, this is when all NYCFC fans can take a huge sigh of relief, because they got a penalty as Pereira was brought down by Awazim in the box there. And in the 7th minute of stoppage time, here comes Santi Rodriguez trying to ice this game and send this game back to TKL Stadium for game number 3. And he did exactly that. So the final score of this game, with NYCFC winning 3-1, and they force a game free in Cincinnati in just a couple of days. The shots in this one, 14 shots with 11 that Cincinnati had, 6 shots on goal for the 5 that NYCFC had, 4 shots off target for the 3 that Cincinnati has, 3 shots off block for the 6 that NYCFC had, and possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession that Cincinnati has in this game. And while it was not comfortable whatsoever from NYCFC, the most important thing is that they survived and able to force a game free. And I think, this game just kind of shows that, it's going to be interesting to see how game 3 is going to look like, especially with the way that, heading into game number 3, something's going to have to give, because, Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure they do not want to go back to TKL Stadium in front of their home fans. I mean, it's good to play in front of their home fans, but they've been very poor this season, considered to be a team in the top 3 this year, not doing very, very well at home, and now they're going to have to somehow get another home win to win this series. And for NYCFC, we know that they can win at home, and especially at a baseball stadium, but the problem is they can't win on the road. They're not as effective on the road as they are at home, and that's going to have to give if they want to win this series. So that should be a very interesting narrative heading into game number 3, because after seeing this game and even going back to game number 1 to some extent, well, actually not really to some extent, Cincinnati absolutely dominated that game against NYCFC, but with now NYCFC kind of countering that in game number 2, should be interesting to see how game 3 is going to look like. But that being said, I am now going to switch board and look at the last 2 games, including the one that I just attended a couple of hours ago. Alright, so moving on, in the next game, we got Inter Miami versus Atlanta United, and I'm not sure if the Apple TV CEO and also Don Gambard is probably happy the fact that there's a game free, because, the ratings will be good for game free and there's more money, or the fact that they are sweating their bullets right now, seeing Atlanta United have now forced a game free and forced pretty much an elimination game between both of these teams, because as we all know, if Inter Miami gets eliminated, well, that's a big win for the MLS General and the neutrals out there. That is a huge loss for Don Gabbard and this Apple TV CEO in terms of the ratings for the rest of these playoffs. But one thing for sure, in this game between Inter Miami and Atlanta United, this is probably one of the best games that Atlanta United has played this season at home, and that in typical Atlanta United fashion, and I've said this before, there's just something about Atlanta United game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Not only the atmosphere is incredible, but they always will score a late goal. Either they score the late goal or give up a late goal on the opposition, because that's just how it works for the last two seasons for this Atlanta United side when they're playing at home. Now, in the first half, the first shot of the game, C. Suarez puts it over from close range, and that came off of a turnover from Atlanta as well. And that is something you do not want to do, and probably the last team to do that when you give the ball away cheaply, it's against this Inter Miami team, because Messi and friends is going to find ways to pounce on it, and they are very fortunate that Luis Suarez didn't put this one away. And I gotta say, in this game, this game for Inter Miami, it kind of looked like the game that they had against Charlotte, where it just fell off in terms of these front four players that we talk about. None of these guys really had a good game whatsoever against this Atlanta team. Now, again, a lot of credit has to go to Atlanta United, and that this defense was playing lights out to stop against an Inter Miami team that, it takes a lot to stop this Inter Miami team, and they did exactly that. But up to this point, the shots were one apiece 15 minutes in. There hasn't really been a lot of chances, and that was kind of partially due to Miami maybe being patient with their build-up and not really finding a lot of success in the final third itself. But in the 22nd minute, Messi puts it one from close range before a TRA was in on goal there, but he was crucially poked the way, or he was before he was going to take that shot, it was poked away by Allen on a crucial moment. By the way, Busquets did not play in this game. They mentioned he had a sickness coming into this one. So Noah Allen steps in this game, and I thought he had a good game in this one, stepping in for Sergio Busquets, which I'm not a big surprise. I think Noah Allen, he has had an incredible season, and again, he's part of that backup brigade for Inter Miami that I don't think a lot of people have talked about enough, how good that backup brigade and the depth that this team has, where they, even if they're missing some of their big star, they have guys that can step in, and the level doesn't really drop too much as a result. But in the 27-minute, calendar would deny Marenchik from long range, as the shots were 5-3 for Atlanta 30 minutes in. But then in the 40th minute, Miami takes the lead, and this is where I mentioned about the goalkeeping howler, and that, in the end, on the score sheet, it says David Martinez scores this goal, but it doesn't do justice in terms of the fact that, Brad Guzan, he kind of had a Charlie Brown moment here in terms of slipping on himself as he was taking this ball and kick this one out, right? Basically, was gonna boot this one upfield, and even though he definitely felt like he was obstructed by a Inter Miami player, I think it was Redondo, the one that he felt like was obstructed by that. I mean, it was pretty clear that there was no contact. They did at least go to VAR to see whether or not if that is the case, And in the end, VAR says no, there was no contact whatsoever, and I think it's the right call. And yeah, like I said, just an absolute gift of a goal, and that just another list of just some really terrible goalkeeping howler that we've seen. We've seen just so many of them this playoffs, and it's not really a good thing to see. So, I mean, it's a good thing to laugh about it, but it's also not a good thing if you're the team that suffered that, and especially in terms of doing a reputation of what the playoffs is in this league itself. But we do head to halftime with Miami leading 1-0 in the second half. Atlanta, of course, they're on the front foot, and they had to be. I mean, they had to go for it. They're playing for their season up to this point, but really they aren't able to put a lot of pressure against this resilient Miami defense. In the 56th minute, Alba just missed one on the outstretched leg, and that would be a huge miss too, and a miss that was a big turning point in this game, because just 2 minutes later, Atlanta did get the equalizer. It's Derek Williams. He scored from Amador to top the game up at 1 apiece. It was a great delivery there from Amador, and even a better diving header from Derek Williams. And again, Atlanta, they just this Atlanta team, whenever they face against Inter Miami, for whatever reason, they have really given Inter Miami a lot of hard time, and they've always find ways to score some crucial goal against this Inter Miami side. I mean, we saw it with Saba Lobjanidze. He has really been the terror of Inter Miami recently, but here it comes from an unlikely source. I mean, Derek Williams have not scored a goal in a long time for Atlanta United, and here he scored one in probably the most crucial moment in a do or die game for Atlanta United. And yeah, just like that, the game was tied up at 1 apiece. Calendar then denied Lobjanidze, but he spills that, and it falls to Fortune, who round Calendar, but he hits the side netting. So again, almost another goalkeeping howler. Drake Calendar has had some problem these past couple of games, and really maybe in the second half of the season, he has not been the same goalkeeper that we saw in the beginning of the season. I just wondered, when he got called up by the U.S. men's national team, we've seen this before when MLS players get called up by the national team, that, as much as it's a privilege to be called up by the national team, it can also be a curse, because, we have seen players when they got called up by the national team, maybe the spotlight kind of started to become a little too bright, and they kind of can't handle it once they get back into their club level, and there's some expectation that is being set. And yeah, Calendar, he has just not been as sharp as what we see. Now, that being said, at times he has still looked good, but he's making more mistake than what we saw in the beginning of the season, and he almost made a bad mistake here, and he's very fortunate, no pun intended, that fortune did not bury that one. Momentum again was with Atlanta as they were pressing for the lead. Alba then puts it high from close in the 66th minute, as Jordi Alba was trying to replicate what he did in game number 1. The direct ball has been very dangerous for Miami, and I thought that could be the difference for Miami to retake the lead. Guzan then denied Suarez from close before TRA almost scored an own goal, as Messi I think he was trying to go for Olympico, and TRA trying to deflect that behind, but he's very fortunate he didn't deflect that one into his own net, and it hits the post there. But in the 72nd minute, Messi puts it wide off the volley, and I don't want to just kind of put more dampers in Inter Miami after this loss, but keep in mind, Messi has not scored a goal so far in the playoffs. You also kind of just wonder, maybe Guzan has had Messi hexed there, and maybe has gotten him to his head. I mean, I shouldn't say that in terms of the greatest player of all time. It's going to take a lot to try to rattle him, but yeah, again, these last 2 games, he hasn't really looked like the same Messi that we've seen throughout the season. But there was no doubt Miami was knocking on the door, and again, you just kind of had a sense, this is Miami. They will find a way to get the win, right? Well, the shots were 9-7 for Atlanta up to this point. Again, the shots were started to piled up for Miami as well. There was one point Atlanta was really dominating the shots. Messi then puts one into the stands from close in the 83rd minute, as Atlanta, again, it seems like they might be playing for PKs, because they were just getting completely pinned deep. Miami just continue to create pressure, and again, this does not bode well, because it's going to line up the narrative of, well, somehow Miami was going to score a late winner to win this game, because that's how it is, right? Well, in the 89th minute, it looked like it wasn't the case, when the post would deny Lobjanidze, and it actually rebound to Schleich, who puts this one over. But then in the second minute of stoppage time, it looked like Messi has opened his playoff accounts. But the problem was the flag was up for offside when he put into the back net, and rightfully so. I mean, the flag was way up before he even put the one ball into the back net, so it was pretty obvious that that was offside. But just as we thought that we were going to go to a PK shootout, in the 5th minute of stoppage time, John De Silva. He scored for Moranchek and Muyumba to give the win for Atlanta United and force a game free at Chase Stadium in Miami. And again, it was a really good goal there from John De Silva, who, he hasn't had a good season compared to the breakout year that he had last season. But what a way to finally score a crucial goal in the most crucial moment. And yeah, just like that, this series is going back to Shea Stadium. I'm pretty sure not a lot of people thought that this was going to go 3 games. I mean, I knew that Atlanta was going to give Miami maybe some hard time, but I didn't think that this was going to go to a 3-game series. And again, it just shows you how Atlanta United, right now, I feel like Atlanta is kind of playing with house money. I mean, I know I shouldn't say that because, this is an Atlanta team that has big expectation in the beginning of the season, but consider what has gone on to this team, of how they have just completely stripped down the quality that they had in the middle of the season and pretty much go through a quick transitional period and build a new team and still able to make it to the playoffs. This Atlanta team is really kind of giving me a little bit of the RSL vibe from a couple of years ago. Remember a couple of years when Real Salt Lake made it to the playoff just barely with a legendary goal that was scored by Demerit Krylak against Sporting KC, and then they went on the run to the Western Conference Final. Atlanta can maybe replicate that. Now, obviously, if you're Don Gabbard and if you're an Apple TV CEO, you would definitely not want that to happen, especially your ultimate golden goose and the team that will generate the revenue and the interest in the playoffs needs to not be eliminated after the first round. But who knows? I mean, we'll see how Game 3 is going to look like. I'm pretty sure Atlanta is not going to lie down in game 3. I mean, obviously, I do think that despite this off game that Inter Miami has had, there's no doubt that they're still going to be heavily favored heading into Game 3. And you usually do not see Messi and friends have off day 2 games in a row. But yeah, again, I didn't think a lot of people thought that this was going to go to a 3-game series. And again, all credit has to go to Atlanta United. They really play their hearts out in this one to now force a Game 3 that, again, I'm pretty sure those Apple TV executive and also Don Gabbard is probably happy that there's more ratings in terms of this pivotal Game 3. But at the same time, they're very nervous and hope that the script will go their way, that their golden goose will move on into the next round. But that being said, moving on into the last game, and remember how I said this was going to be a 30-minute or 40-minute video? How about add 45 into it? I probably should have put the timestamp in this video if I was going to do that. But yeah, heading into the final game, which is the game that I went to. And again, this game started at 8 p.m. It's the latest kickoff out of any of the game to in this first round of playoffs. So you know the rules. When there's a late game, there's going to be some MLS after dark, and you also know that this game's going to have to go to a PK shootout because it's a late game. And coming into this one, I had a feeling this was going to go to a PK shootout. There's just something about Minnesota and Real Salt Lake where when both of these teams play, nobody is going to get a win. It's going to end in a draw. It has happened 5 times in a row coming into this matchup. Make it 6th time in a row after this one. And in fact, I also even got the scoreline wrong here. It's not 0-0. That was the final scoreline. That was game number 1. The final scoreline in this is actually with 1-1, and that Minnesota was able to win the PK shootout just like they did in game number 1. Now, in the first half, Pereira had a shot that was deflected and goes wide in the back post. By the way, I didn't even mention doing my quick recap where I was actually sitting this time at Allianz Field. I was actually sitting pretty close, right behind where the Minnesota United player was sitting, and I can see Coach Eric Ramsey in terms of him being in the tactical area, and it was a very fascinating kind of point seeing what he said. Now, I couldn't really hear him because the atmosphere at Allianz Field was absolutely electric in this game, probably the best I've ever been during the last couple of times I've been at Allianz Field. Of course, it kind of makes sense because this is a playoff game, and this is the first time that the Loons are playing in a playoff game at home in front of fans since 2019. But Yeah, I can at least kind of hear what he's saying, at least some of the direction that he gives, and see the substitution come in. So that's a very fascinating experience as well. Even though I did had to pay a bit for this one, knowing the fact that it is a playoffs and I'm sitting pretty close to where the pitch is. But from what I also can see, kind of what everything is going on, and I can definitely say that Joaquin Pereira, yeah, this was not a great game for him, and that I don't want to be concerned the fact that he's gonna end up to be another latest bust in terms of the DPS that Minnesota have signed, but yeah, it has not looked good so far, and I'm just really hoping that this is just him coming into a new league and need times to develop. But just like the last game, RSL had most of the possession. The Loons were kind of sitting in a deep block, ready to pounce on the transition, because we know RSL can be vulnerable at times when they gave the ball away. McMath then denied Yeboah from close range, and that also came off of a bad turnover from RSL. And what's kind of interesting, this was around the same time that Minnesota gave up a bad turnover, and Dane Sinclair had to make a big save to keep this one at 1-0. And it feels like the script was reversed. Now it seems like it's RSL the one that gave up a bad turnover, and I think this was kind of also the moment when Brian Vera basically completely hit his clearance here and set Yeboah in on goal. I don't quite remember if this, of course, is a moment I should remember because I went to the game itself. But yeah, I think this might be the moment that of course is the case. And again, Brian Vera pretty much was booed mercilessly throughout the game, and rightfully so after the spitting incident that we saw back in October 2nd. But in the 21st minute, Boxall would then hit it wide from close. The shots were 3-1 for Minnesota up to this point. But besides the McMahon save, it's been a very cagey game, almost identical to game number one, though what it was not identical is when Minnesota started to press for the opener. Though first Catranas did heads it high from the free kick, and then McMath had to deny Longwane from close. Yeboah then had a shot that was deflected and goes wide as the Loons were knocking on the door, but the question is, can they get that opener? Crooks would then puts it into the stands in the 31st minute. That came off of a bad turnover from the Loons, which, again, this is kind of the thing that I worry about Minnesota coming into this game, dealing with the press that RSL has. Minnesota does not do well at times dealing with teams that likes to press against them, and that we saw it in this game and also in the last game as well. They were playing with a lot of fire with those turnover and are very lucky they didn't get burnt because of it. Pereira then had an absolute free header but missed wide in the 35th minute. Again, that's just a sign of a player that just have no confidence in front of goal, but still one that Joaquin Pereira absolutely needs to put that one on target. And I also immediately wrote, oh boy, looks like it's one of those games, isn't it, for the Loons at home, where finishing is nowhere to be found, and it's just going to be an agonizing experience seeing this team missing the target left and right. And it continued to be the case in the 40th minute as Yeboah just completely fluffed his lines from close range, and kind of just sums up the finishing for Minnesota in the first half. It was nowhere to be found, and we do head to halftime with the scoreless between both of these teams, and this is when I kind of got nervous because I've seen this story before, and it does not go so well for this Loons team. And in fact, it looked like it was proven true in the 47th minute when the guy that's been booed mercilessly throughout this game, Brian Vera, would put the ball into the back of the net. Problem was, they did go to VAR to see whether or not if Crooks was embellishing this moment there, and basically was in the way of the shot, pretty much screaming Dane Sinclair as a result. He was, and VAR overturned this call. But yeah, that is a huge wake-up call for the Loons, who just completely fell asleep dealing with the corner, and set piece defending would be a problem for Minnesota. It feels like the bad habit in terms of not dealing with set pieces for this Minnesota team that we saw back in that bad run of form, especially during July. It started to reel its ugly head again in this game. Marichik then puts it wide from close in the 51st minute. I thought it was a positive start for RSL as they were looking to fret on the set pieces, and why not? When you're facing against a Loons team that was having a lot of problems in terms of dealing with set pieces, that's where you need to take advantage. But in the 52nd minute, Minnesota finally got that deserved the lead. Well, I say deserved it, but RSL was kind of pushing to try to get the opening goal in the beginning, but Minnesota finally got a goal that they should have had in the first half, as Josef Rosales, a guy that has been kind of been the provider throughout the season, he would score from Yeboah and Lod to give Minnesota a 1-0 lead. And as I said in the quick recap, I mean, if Yeboah is kind of snake bitten in this game, why not turn provider in terms of providing a great assist from Rosales to give Minnesota a 1-0 lead? And then he was looking for another just a couple of minutes later on the free kick, but puts it high. Julio then puts it right to Dane Sinclair in the 62nd minute before he puts it wide from close in the 64th minute. By the way, I mentioned in the quick recap, this game kind of is looked like a very typical Minnesota United home game from last season, where it was just even when they had these kind of game where they're playing well, they can't finish, and then the opposition kind of go at them when they have the lead, and think that Aaron Ramsey unfortunately falling back to bad habit that Adrian Heath has, where they were just kind of almost protecting this 1-0 lead, even though I knew that was probably not going to stand with this team. Gonzalez then puts it wide after another poor Minnesota turnover. Again, I thought Minnesota once again just playing with fire, giving the ball away way too cheaply against that RSL press. And then an interesting fact I've noticed is that the PA announcer already announced the sub, even though the sub, of course, was being made, or at least the first part is. He announced that Joaquin Pereira was being subbed off, even though the sub wasn't made. It eventually did made like about 2 minutes later, but that's kind of awkward. If you're Joaquin Pereira, hearing your name, you're about to get subbed out. I mean, I don't think he's probably that disappointed about that because, again, I didn't think he had a really good performance. He actually had a really poor performance, and I was kind of really frustrating in terms of not just his finishing in this one, but what is supposed to do well is in terms of setting up his teammate with his passing, and it was just clearly not there. It feels like every time when he touched the ball and trying to set up his teammate, it just the ball just turned over, and it's just basically become a black hole. And again, I don't want to make early judgment just yet in terms of him, and that I don't want to say that he could be a potential bust once again in terms of the numerous bust DP that Minnesota has signed in recent year, but it's not looking good with the way that how he's been playing the last couple of games ever since he made his debut. But then in the 72nd minute, Chicho would just completely miss hit from long range. By the way, Chicho did not get the start in this game. I think this is the first game in a long time that Chicho did not get the start. It is pretty clear that I think Pablo Mascherani have run out of patience in terms of Chicho Arango and how bad of a form he's been in, and of course he was benched, and this one had to come off the bench, and he was hoping maybe that will lit a fire under him, but instead on his first touch he's completely mishits it from long range. I mean that just kind of sums up his second half of the season. I have no idea what has gone wrong with Chicho Arango and what he did during that 4-game suspension to really just completely look like a guy that not just only a shell of his former self, but just doesn't look anywhere close to that player that was incredibly deadly in the beginning of the season, and almost kind of make LAFC fans proud, the fact that they sold Chicho, and that was the right decision to do so a couple of years ago. But in the 75th minute, RSL does get the equalizer, as Anelli, the one that gets the equalizer for RSL. He scored here from Crooks, and I thought that was coming for RSL. With the pressure that they've been putting on, with Minnesota kind of doing row heave mode again, you just had a feeling RSL was going to tie the game up, and that of course is the case. But I thought Minnesota started to go on the offense again, as RSL may be playing for penalty or try to play the game that the Loons were doing, trying to set up on the transitional moment. To be fair, it kind of worked out because RSL had some dangerous moment on the transition at time as the Loons were pushing up high. Oluwaseyi would then hits it right to McMath in the 86th minute, but then in the 87th minute, Justin Glad thought that he got the crucial goal for RSL, but the problem was the goal was disallowed, and it was disallowed on the development play. It was Michael Chang, the one on an offside position, rightfully called off. But again, it just feels like I'm seeing a similar script before, where Minnesota find ways to have a game that they should have won a long time ago, but now throwing it away. And not to mention, when it was announced that there was 10 minutes of stoppage time, I was thinking, oh boy, I mean, I don't even think we're going to go to a PK. I mean, part of me want to be positive that Minnesota was still going to have a chance to score that second to win it in regulation. But part of me, I just had that fear of the fact that they were going to concede a late goal and lose in a very typical Minnesota way at home that I've seen time and time again under Adrian Heath. The good news is, as the time winds down, it just kind of feel like both team doesn't really want to attack, and that both of these team, was really kind of playing for penalty, and that is exactly what we got. As once again, this game went to a PK shootout, and in the end, in the PK shootout, it went four rounds, and similar to what I said in the beginning of this video, talk about Charlotte, Orlando City. The scoreline was pretty much the same. The goalkeeping was the big difference, especially the winning team, as Sambin was the one that wins the PK shootout for Minnesota in round number 4, and that was after RSL missed 3 straight penalties from round 2 and round 4. Dane Sinclair made some big save out of that PK shootout. He denied Diego Gonzalez in the second round, and in the third round, Matt Crooks basically paid tribute to Justin Glad by putting it into the stands in the third round as well. And then the fourth round, I think the fourth penalty was probably the most impressive one that Dane Sinclair saved, denying Diego Luna on a full stretch there, and even hit a bit of a Vince Carter kind of celebration after that as well. But yeah, Minnesota of course gets the win, and again in a series like this where we knew that it was going to be tight, and we knew that maybe it was going to come down to the PKs with the way how both of these teams played throughout these 2 games. It's not a big surprise that both of these came in a PK shootout. Now you could argue that maybe Minnesota doesn't deserve to move on into the conference semifinal, as it kind of brings up that ugly argument in terms of this playoff format of it's just ridiculous. The fact that the team can literally win 2 PK shootout, don't even need to win the game in regulation, and they move on into the conference semifinal. And in some extent, I do agree that it is kind of a little ridiculous that of course is the case. But that being said, it is what it is. That is the playoff format it is. And especially when you have a game like this being very tight, sometimes PKs, those is what it comes down. And, credit to Minnesota. I think they have definitely been better in these 2 PK shootout. And, for RSL, even going back to game 1, they did not look good at all in their PKs. They actually end up missing 5 out of their 9 PKs that they took out of these 2 games. That is rough stats. I mean, I know shooting PKs, you think it's kind of a sure thing in the playoffs, but it really isn't, especially with the mind games and the gamesmanship that is being shown. But still, shooting 4 out of 9 in these 2 PK shootout in the playoffs, yeah, that is a rough stats, and there's no doubt there's a reason why RSL is going home and lost two PK shootout in this to get themselves swept. And kind of prove to me that, yeah, indeed this team was fraudulent from the beginning of the second half of the season until now, where it just simply they fall apart for this RSL team that it's hard to believe this team at once had contention of being a Western Conference contender, and a team that at times was sitting at first place in the Western Conference itself. But either way, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.